Well, good morning, Michelle, and welcome back to our discussions for 2016.
Hello, Stephen.
It's election year here and in the US, and Parliament is back, so what more could we ask for? This hasn't been the best of weeks for the government as a first week back. They raised the idea of lifting the GST and then seemingly have to retreat in the face of public opinion and perhaps resistance from their backbench and their National Party partners. What's going on?
Well, of course, they opened up this big tax debate and presented that as a virtue, that we'd have this great national conversation. Well, the conversation's got a bit confused and scratchy, and of course we've had proposals thrown out by premiers, we've had all sorts of lobby groups putting forward their wish lists, and that's all been rather messy. But what we saw this week, and I think this could have been a quite crucial week when we come to write the history of this tax debate, is that the government backbench became very agitated about the notion of the GST going up, the 15% GST option to finance big tax cuts. We've had the Treasurer going out more or less on a limb, obviously favouring this option. What we saw this week was that Malcolm Turnbull was making it very clear no decisions had been made. I think behind the scenes the government modelling is suggesting that that sort of option is probably not worth the cost because it would not produce a really big growth dividend, and so there's been a pulling back.
So they obviously do want to go to the next election offering income tax cuts, but where are they going to get the headroom from if it's not from the GST?
Well, they could crack down on concessions. There's a whole lot of tightening in the system that's possible, but of course that wouldn't yield big income tax cuts.
And it won't be negative gearing.
Well, there's been talk about negative gearing, but it hasn't been spoken about, at least in the last couple of weeks.
Another contentious matter is the return of the construction industry watchdog, the Australian Building and Construction Commission. The government seems to be struggling to get 6 out of 8 crossbenchers in the Senate and has been through a messy discussion about who can see the confidential final volume of the Dyson-Hayden report. So what do you think are the prospects for this measure? And if it fails, will the government really go for a double dissolution?
Well, the prospects at the moment are not good, but of course negotiations can lead to a better outcome, and they're only starting really this time round. The Prime Minister earlier in the week raised the possibility of a double dissolution, made it clear that the government wanted this measure through by the end of March, or mid-March actually, when the Parliament gets up for the recess, but the Senate has now voted for a committee to investigate this. That committee reports a couple of days before this current session ends. So, in fact, of course, although the government has double dissolution triggers, it wouldn't be able to raise the sort of storm that's necessary to start a double dissolution. So I think the double dissolution option really receded by the end of the week dramatically. It's not the Prime Minister's first preference anyway.
And then finally, Michelle, our homegrown Donald Trump, Clive Palmer, he's in the wars after his nickel company went into administration. People lost their jobs, and then it turned out that the company had made donations to his party at a crucial time. And although he asserts that he wholly owned the company at the time and he can do what he wants with his own money, it isn't a good look. So whatever the merits, is his reputation now such that he's finished politically?
I think he is finished politically. I don't think he would get re-elected in his own seat of Fairfax if he contests. He's only got 1 out of his original 3 senators now, and I think that that was a flash-in-the-pan party that would be absolutely struggling at the next election. But of course we have another new party coming through, and that's the Nick Xenophon team. So Nick Xenophon, very popular South Australian independent, is trying to go national, and he's a very credible figure, but it's a big job ahead of him. It'll be interesting to see how he does go.
Well, we'll be back next week to talk about the rich tapestry that is Australian politics. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Stephen.